All right, welcome to episode 5 of the 27 podcast. Here with Sean Urell and Wesley Venable. Yep. Today we are doing our first virtual session with a good friend of mine, Kirk Plaisance. Wait, that's how I say it, right?
Plaisance.
Plaisance. Dude,
there you go.
You messed up the man's name.
I am your host, Sean Urell, and
my name is Wesley Venable.
And today I'm going to mispronounce it again. Today we are doing our first ever virtual session with Kirk. Today we are doing our first ever virtual episode with Kirk Plaisance. This is actually take 4 for me mispronouncing his name, even mispronouncing Kirk.
That's true.
Kirk is a good friend of mine. He and I connected in an urban mission trip, urban outreach in Atlanta, where he is based out of. At the time, he was with the Atlanta. I'm just gonna mispronounce everything. I'm keep going at this point. I got the first part in. I'm gonna keep going.
I'll let the audience know we are at 14 minutes of us recording, trying this, but
all on me just messing up mispronunciations. Kirk was with the Atlanta Dream Center, which is he's still now connected with, but he is now under the Frontline Response, where they do a lot of work rescuing people off of the street in homelessness, in sex trafficking. And one of the things we'll be hoping to circle around a lot more is their children's ministry, kids living in the inner city. And we will probably be talking more about how the youth in those environments also going to get looped into sex trafficking and homelessness, as well as other things. At this point, I want to hand the floor over to Kirk. Welcome. Thank you for being on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Man, this is a real honor. Sean, we've connected now for about a year or so.
Yeah.
And off and on, and I do a really good job trying to ignore his calls towards me.
My random video chats at 11 p.m. my time is like 2 a.m. your time, and like you're like, hey, can't talk right now. What's up? I'm at a softball game like at 2 a.m. Yeah. Maybe it's not that extreme. Before we continue, we're gonna start in our tradition of showcasing our guest's favorite beverage. And when I asked Kirk today, he said his favorite beverage. Oh, he outdid us. He's got the 2-liter. He's got the 2-liter. Shots fired. I'm actually not supposed to drink Mountain Dew, but I'm going to make an exception for this episode because.
Who says you can't drink Mountain Dew?
I got in my nice ESPN cup.
Can you give us a nice pour? Oh, you already poured it. Never mind.
Oh, I already poured it. I can do that, though.
Yes,
please. I can do it.
For the people that are watching and not listening. But if you put it right up next to the mic, maybe they can hear.
Maybe.
Oh, yeah, we heard that.
I heard it.
We got that. Yeah, I'm trying to be better about, like, showcasing when our like, beverage portion of the show. I really like drinks. I don't know if you saw. Oh yeah, you saw Kirk. We had somebody come on here and the audacity to like have us bring on kombucha. I cannot stand that stuff.
Yeah, that's rough. That's rough stuff.
It is rough stuff.
Actually, when you asked me, I was like, what obscure drink do I have here? And I was like, I guess Mountain Dew. That's about the worst I'm going to go right now.
It's not bad.
I think the most obscure thing that I've had. Well, 2 things as far as beverages go is butterscotch soda, but you can find different ones because of the whole Harry Potter fandom world. But more specifically, licorice soda, and there's only one brand that makes it, and the brand is called Dragon Drool. And yeah,
well, I remember when I went back when I used to drink before I got sober.
I know this is going.
Some Jägermeister.
Jaeger and Sambuca. Sambuca mixed with some Barks root beer. Yeah, that was my jam.
We used to do the Jaeger bombs with the Red Bull.
But this was pre-Christ.
Yo, that was BC.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of it.
Yeah, you make that kind of joke.
Yeah.
So, Memorial Day will make 10 years.
Wow.
Been dry the whole time?
Yep.
Nice. Well, Kirk, why don't you take a couple minutes to tell us, everyone listening, watching at home, who are you, where do you come from, like significant parts of your life, what made you who you are, and then what you find yourself doing today.
Sure. Yeah. Man, first off, honor to have me on this. I watched the first few episodes, and man, I really love what you guys are doing. And I just want to get involved in helping you guys get to where you need to be, and I celebrate you guys. So thank you. It's a really cool niche, and really cool idea that I haven't seen done the way you guys are doing it. So congratulations on that. Yeah, name's Kirk. A lot of people call me KP, but then once I got into ministry, it kind of switched to PK. So you can actually look me up on the gram at KP to PK, because I used to think maybe that's like my Saul to Paul, man.
I like it.
But here's the deal. I grew up in southern Louisiana, a little bit north of New Orleans, and lived there most of my life. And I grew up in a very large family. I have 4 sisters. I have 6 stepsisters, like 30-something nieces and nephews. Really big family. And man, I being born in New Orleans, there's a couple prerequisites that you're born right into. You're born into Catholicism. 1, everybody's got to be Catholic first. And 2, everybody needs to drink. And if you're not in one of those 2 areas, you're just weird. And so usually, I was super excited for my 18th birthday, because when I turned 18, I was going to be able to get my first legal drink. And at 17, they turned the age to 21. And so then I had to wait like 4 more years of sneaking in the bar. And honestly, if you could reach the bar, they would serve you back then. And so like the whole carding thing was really crazy. But what that did for me was that kind of enhanced a very big love for alcohol in my life. And a lot of my family was into that too. I did that. I ruined pretty much a fairly decent opportunity to maybe play baseball collegiately. Also, in the midst of all that, I joined a fraternity and had all this fun. Was introduced what girls were not just good study partners, and went to college, and man, just really made a mess of myself, to be honest. Drugs, alcohol, sex, you name it, and ended up joining the military. Failed out fairly, which I was like a 3.6 or so student without really even trying. And so I thought without really trying was going to get me somewhere, and I could just, now introduce all these other cool things I was doing. And man, I really bombed it. So I went in the military, and then in the military, I thought I was going to straighten up, which I straightened up as an adult, but I didn't straighten up my habits. They just got worse, to be honest. And when I got towards the end of my career, or the end of my 6 years, my mom had passed away, which brought me home to Louisiana. And in that process, I met my now wife, and we were a mess as well. We were a mess. We met in 2001. We're actually working on our 20th year of kind of knowing each other, but the first 7 years of our life was just a disaster. Let me just say it. Loved each other tremendously, but it was surrounded by our addictions, and just really bad parenting, really bad. We weren't saved. We weren't Christians. We weren't anything I would probably look up to be, and my want to be that role model for my kids. At that time, when we finally got, I got married, we got pregnant, and at that time, really thought, God, got to get my life together. I kind of out of the blue, just knew my wife needed some help to get to a place to get better. We were separated, and I just said I will never drink again. That was Memorial Day weekend, 2011, and which is about 2 months away or so, a month and a half or so ago. And then about 2 months later, she called me up and said, "Hey, I need your help," and because we were separated at the time, and she went off to go get some help and came back, and she's never drank since. So in July, she'll make 10 years sober as well. Got plugged in the church immediately when she got back. The church is actually what helped me to get sober and get all that together. These leaders just really kept picking at me and like, we're watching what you're doing. We're watching what you're writing on these prayer cards. And I was really embarrassed, to be honest. And then fast forward a couple years sober, this thing, and we decided to have our third kid, and which his birthday is tomorrow. He'll make 6.
Nice.
And yeah, so like we started to have some kids, and I decided right as we were getting sober that I wanted to pay back the church, but I thought I was disqualified. So I didn't think I could be a pastor or, because I come from Catholicism. You're a priest or you're not. I don't understand all this other stuff that you guys are doing, but can I like be the janitor? Can I, whatever, can I just work at the church? And I was actually in nursing school when that happened. And so I dropped out of nursing school and I went into ministry school. Finished about 3 years later, summa cum laude. And before I even graduated, they gave me a position at the same church I got saved in and they helped us with. And literally, they asked me to be the generations pastor. So that is birth to college, preschool, elementary, middle school, high school, and college all fell under me. I did ministries with all those guys. And then I started taking my teams to the Atlanta Dream Center about 6 years ago. And so went on the missions experiences, and on the third mission experience on the way here, I was asked to join the team. I met with them when I was here, kind of secret squirrel, like I don't think I want to take this position, so I'm not telling anybody. And so I went and I did it, and they said some really key words. My wife and I think we're going to plant a church. Actually, I'm in the processes of doing that right now in North Carolina. Wilmington is where we want to land to reach the abandoned, the afflicted, the addicted, and the alone. And those 4 words basically describe me and my wife. I mean, that's what we were trying to reach. And when they wanted to hire me, 1, I realized that the Dream Center was just that. They're reaching those type of people. And 2, they mentioned that they wanted to do maybe some more dream centers and that maybe we could be one of those. And so after about a month of praying, I decided to take it, moved down here, and I've been here for 3 years. I took the missions position, so I'm over all the missions experiences. So truth be told, I got sober 10 years ago, went to school, got saved in the process, went to school, never had read the Bible ever. Never even had read it. And I was like walking in, it was like bringing in, the Odyssey and the Iliad. Like, I was like, I don't know what this is. Like, I have no idea. And so I'm reading all that stuff and I'm like, this is crazy. And man, now I'm here. And I'm also the director of our school as well. And honestly, I think I probably have about maybe less than 24 months here left to kind of do what I'm doing and hand off to some really cool people, because it's time to kind of get moving in our church planting. And now my wife and my daughter as well, just side story, they're in ministry as well. So doing really cool things in ministry. And so, yep, all of that to say, gosh, I made a ton of mistakes, and now I'm here just having a blast, man, and doing some really cool things that I never thought I would do. Didn't even think I was even wanting to do, much less getting to do the kind of ministries that we are available. So
some of those cool things, include what I came out to Atlanta with a team from my last church to participate in. It was a week-long, immersion course of ministry and outreach on the streets of Atlanta. and to learn how to serve people that are in the lowest of their lows, and then to be able to take that information back to wherever we come from. In my case, the Seattle area, and some of that, I gotta break it down into three groups. Children, children's ministry, youth in underdeveloped areas, um, sex trafficking, and homelessness. And so you bring in teams through most, if not all, the summer, and then some. They're there for a week. What does how fast can you recap what a week looks like for a team that comes out?
Yeah, sure. So prior to COVID, looks a lot different than now.
Right. So let's go prior to COVID.
COVID thing, because I think we're going to go back to that very shortly. So prior to COVID, we bring anywhere between 800 and 1,000 visitors in between the months of March and July, right? Teams come in throughout the year, like you guys came in the fall, but most of our teams come March to July. What we do is 30-ish hours of ministry. That's teach, train. So we're going to teach and train how to do these things. And orient you to all the different supplies and the style and what we're going to do on that ministry. And then we're going to go out and walk that ministry out with you. And then we're going to hand it off to you and let you do it yourself. We're going to come back, debrief about it, talk about it a little bit, and then we're going to celebrate with a meal. So we're going to eat, outreach, go home, start over, rinse, repeat. And so we basically what we do is we house about 1,000 people or so a year for come in on a Monday, leave on the weekend, 30 or so hours of ministry. We give you 12 meals. We give you the most comfortable camp bed bunks that you've ever been in your life. Just planned. I mean, it's a real blessing to have opportunity to house people in and have air conditioning and have hot water and have meals, so you don't have to find a church floor to sleep on or anything like that. And then you get to do ministry, and all of our ministries are evangelists. There's none of this unless we have a rain out or something like that. None of them are build this, paint that. It's here's some flyers, lots of food, some water bottles, some whatever. Let's go serve the least of these and hand out food and whatever. And there's a flyer in there that has some phone numbers. And if they call that number, we will help them get off the streets and fully fund it. That's the goal. And so 1,100 people out of homelessness, 1,600 out of sex trafficking. Right? A year. And then the sex trafficking side alone, there's a 24-hour hotline that can be used nationwide. We put that number on all kinds of really cool things. And and those ladies call us, and we have a rescue team that goes out and brings them to a safe home. And we fully fund all that. We have a safe home and honestly, most of our staff is all rescued. They're all ladies that have been a part of that.
Yeah, I noticed that.
But you wanted to focus more on the children's side, I think, a little bit. And the cool thing about that is, let me just be honest, Sean. When people come and help us get someone off the streets, whether it's in homelessness or sex trafficking, let's just say the homeless side, right? Our streets have 3,500 to 4,000 people on them all the time, right? When COVID happened, it went up, right? It's crazy though. Some of the organizations went up in the giving as well, but the amount of people in the streets because of COVID was just nuts, right? People kicking people out, can't make their bills, whatever. And I'll just say this, the streets takes in so many people because the education level in these big cities, including Atlanta, is just so low. Right by our dorm, there's a school, it's an elementary school, and it's a 1 on a 1 to 10 scale. A 1. They don't hand out zeros in this scale. So I'm not so sure what's happening at that school, but what I do know is it's providing young men and women that are coming out of that don't believe they can make it in the world. And so they end up on the streets doing things they shouldn't be doing. So as we get people off, the system just keeps putting them right back on. Second thing that I would say is the sex trafficking side. The pimps care less if you get a girl off the street, because there's a 14-year-old girl waiting that needs an opportunity. And they tell them, look, I'm going to give you this. I'm going to pay for that. And they do. They buy them clothes. They buy them all this stuff. But what they don't tell them is they're going to chemically bond you with the drugs. And you're going to need those to stay with us. And they just keep coming back. They keep coming back. And so we keep helping people off, but business is right. It's just never going to stop. It just keeps happening. So we decided in the beginnings to do children's ministry. And let's do some prevention and teach these kids at a young age that they have a plan and a purpose that God has for them. We do before school and after school programs. We do VBSs. We do Christmas toy giveaways. During Easter, we brought Easter baskets out that were, I've never seen an Easter basket like this in my life. Do you guys have World Market up there?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, World Market Cost Plus. Yeah.
Dude, we're both from the South too. So
COVID killed World Market's market during Easter. So they get all this Easter junk, right? These amazing chocolate bunnies and all this stuff. And they couldn't do nothing with it because it was COVID. So they donated their whole store to us. Wow. We were handing out like $500-$600 baskets. We had to put all this stuff together, and we were bringing it to like what most people are like the hood, right? Yeah. We're knocking on doors, handing out like these big baskets. It was the craziest thing, right? But that's the kind of stuff we get to do. And those kids, they love consistency. So they see not just us, but like my teams and all those come in, and they're like, oh, were you here last week? And you just got here yesterday, because we're out there so much. We bring food, we bring supplies, we bring toiletries, and really just help them get to every next day. And so that's what we're trying to do with the prevention side. And so that kind of is a quick summary of all three of the ministries. And I know you want to go deeper in a little bit of that.
Yeah, no, I absolutely do. Wesley, you have anything like that's kind of like perking your mind so far yet?
I mean, it's a lot of things where like I feel like I know where I would like suspect where an answer would go, but it would be like what specifically do you do like for each case? Like if you look at a case, like how do you prevent somebody from going into any of these cycles of homelessness or sex trafficking?
Starting at children's, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So here's what they do. We have a team, and it's like a team of kindergarten teachers. Honestly, it's really not kindergarten teachers, but these girls are really amazing. And look, I'm being sexist right there. We have Amari that's in that group, which he's amazing. But it's about 6 or 7 people in this team. And what they do, almost like you're going to school, they have this like plan, right? And they're planning out like weeks in advance of what they call like huddles, right? Huddles is like small group time. And what we're seeing is that when someone wants to be in our program, we take their name, we kind of do like a case management basis, right? Kind of see what they need, see if there's anything that we need to be concerned on a legal level, to be honest. But on a just real practical level, they may be behind in their reading. They may be behind in whatever. And we do some tutoring. We help them get in those spaces. I mean, I'm talking about kindergarten tutoring, preschool tutoring, second grade tutoring. I mean, early stuff, not all just like, older kids, you know what I'm saying? So this thing is all under the ages of probably like 10, right?
Okay.
And so we do a lot of that kind of ministry. But one of our favorite ministries, and Sean, you did this with us, right? And you only came with your team, but when you come with a team when there's like 100 of us, it's just really amazing. We'll go out to their place where there's like windows beat in and trash everywhere and just whatever. And we'll just Metro kids, knock on every door that we can find, right? And when the doors start opening, can I help you? We're like, hey, you got any kids that want to come out and do Metro Kids with us? And they're like, what's that? Oh, it's just ministry. We're going to have some fun, play some games. And what we do is they will all come. This is prior to COVID now. They would all come to a central location. We'd set up church. We'd do them a gospel message. We would do altar call. We'd hand out candy and and things like that. We play games, paint nails, throw a football, kick a soccer ball, right? Sing worship songs and do hand motions, right? And then today we might teach them about Jonah, right? Which is like, man, why aren't we teaching about Jesus? Well, we're doing like a series. You're here for Jonah. So-and-so's here for, Goliath. Next person's here for whatever. And then we're here for Jesus. And, we mix the gospel all the way through, but we'll teach them the Bible, right? And then we'll also teach them just other skills that they don't have. But what we know is consistency, right? Because there's men and women that are out there. One, a lot of the parents are teenagers, right? Or they're needing assistance as well. And then also on top of that is we see that we can just be someone that they trust in any stretch, right? And so we're seeing test scores. They'll send us report cards and they're like, I've never got this before. And it's just simply because we believe in them. And we're like actually telling them to go to school and go to class.
Yeah.
And let me just say this. It's not about us or the team. It's a really good, well out plan. And anybody can do this. But sometimes when you get into these neighborhoods with our friends, that's not a priority. It's just not, unfortunately. And we want to try and make those things a priority, right? And instead of like gentrification and coming and tearing down your whole place, kicking you guys out, building a new condo and putting movie stars in it, right? Because that's kind of the stuff that happens in Atlanta all over the place. It's like, let's help you grow here so you can keep your home and rebuild it.
Yeah.
It's kind of the...
So I have a question for you. It's kind of maybe a two-part question. I'm going to try my best to articulate it all in one go. So you mentioned consistency here now about 3 or 4 times now. And I remember the week I came out, you talked about consistency. And it's been kind of this like question that's been kind of like burning ever since we talked about you coming on. So can you talk about how... Can you talk about how important consistency is, but more specifically, can you talk about how detrimental lack of consistency can be in these ministries, and specifically how much more detrimental they can be in your ministries or your outreaches with youth?
Well, let me just say honestly, great question. But let me just say just on my children, okay? My children alone.
Right.
Ones that, for quote unquote, have that white privilege, right? That quote unquote have middle class, decent jobs, decent whatever. Just, let's just baseline that. My kids have to be super consistent to be successful. If I'm not consistent at home, if I'm not consistently here, consistently helping my kids in their practices on their sports, consistently helping them with their grades, consistently looking over their shoulder whenever they're doing stuff, they tend to find their way astray, right? And then we're going to chase them down and chase that, just like social media, right? Like all these different things that are just flooding in.
Right.
You have to be those barriers and be like, hey, look, this is the program if you want these other things. Well, here's the deal. What we see out there, and look, we just went out there the other day, and I promise you, there's kids under the age of 3, 4 that are just walking around in the front yard with no supervision.
That was
right?
me when I was a kid, yeah.
Right? So 3, 4 years old, we're just walking around. And here's the one thing. It's one, if you're walking around in your suburbia
Right.
fenced-in front yard where the kid's not going to get out. You got safety gates on, whatever,
Right.
whatever.
There's a hound
These
dog
people
watching
walking
after you.
out, and there are beer bottles everywhere. Yeah. There's just trash. There's just stuff. People are smoking dope, doing their whatever. And then you got these kids, and you're like, oh, your son's he's so cute. Oh, that's not my son. You're like,
whose son is he?
Whose son is he? Oh, that's my son. And they're like, right? It's just the way of life out there.
Yeah.
And so when I say consistency, there's not consistency in their life at all. The only thing that's consistent is just chaos. That's the consistency. And we talk about it a lot where we want to break the chain or break the cycle, right? Stop the endless circle, right? And if we can provide and teach them something, right, we might be able to just one person have them not go the ridiculous direction and maybe help change their family, right? Generationally. But if we're not consistent in telling them the message, the chaos will continue to be consistent and it will pull them away. And so we need to have different plans in that process that tells them that there's a purpose for them, that they're loved, who Jesus is, who they are, who they are, and who is over them, right? Like who's Lord of, like many of them don't, not even that they're like agnostic or atheist, they just don't even know. They're here, like we don't teach any of that. There's no standards, there's no, and look, I'm not really, it really sounds as if I'm condescending and talking down. I'm being completely blatant about what we see.
Yeah.
And you know what, if I lived there, or if I looked different, or if I was one of the guys coming out of there, it would be a whole lot different rhetoric, right? It would be like, oh, you know, I'd be doing something really special. But like when I don't have that experience, it looks as if it's condescending, and it's not. I mean, we want to lift them. Like there's nothing that needs to be patted on my back or frontline response. Let me tell you how really amazing frontline is. And this wasn't my idea. We handed out almost 5,000 gifts last year. You know what we did instead of putting our name tags on them and like being like frontline response? Look, you got all these pictures, picture time. What we did was we allowed the parents to come in, pick the gift, and help them wrap it so they could sign it, and it's from them.
Yeah.
Not from us, from them. The kids don't know who they're getting them. The kids thought they were getting it from their parents.
That's way more meaningful for that kid.
Right.
So it's about building big time, like mile markers.
Yeah.
Anna and the team, they have all these benchmarks. Like this kid can read, this kid can do this kid can do that. He knows Jesus, he knows this, he's saved, he's baptized, whatever. And they keep all these little things for these kids. And man, they bust them into church. They do all kinds of stuff. And it's almost as if it's like all encompassing of just this really big plan. And consistency, I think, is probably the most important thing that we do. Yeah. We haven't talked about it a lot in the 4 years I've been here, but it's been my buzzword for the last year is consistency, because I see it. Well, you know, when I'm over there and you see that little kid and he's like, KP, you're back, you know, and that's a big deal. That's a big deal.
So two thoughts I have on this topic of consistency. One, you're talking about your own kids, and you know, it wasn't until you started talking about it that I kind of put everything together. You do everything you do. You pour your heart out into ministry and outreach, you know, all week long, especially during, you know, the busy season. But also you have a daughter who's very talented in softball right now, and you are up late with her. Like, you're always posting these videos of what a good coach looks like, what a strong athlete looks like. Not physically, what their mind looks like, what their actions look like. And you're so invested, and honestly, I look up to a lot. You know, you're the kind of dad I aspire to be someday, you know what I mean? So
yeah. Let me just say this, man. Had a moment today, honestly, in that same vein, that same lane right there. Growing up, you know, I was the youngest of a lot of kids, right? And even when the step kids came in, I was still the youngest. And then my biggest fear in life was always a fear of rejection, right? And that was because as a young kid, I never knew who I was. right? I had this misnomer who I was, and I had my dreams and my hopes, and none of them ever happened, right? And then I filled it with alcohol, and then I filled it with drugs, and then I filled it with sex, and then I filled it with chasing money, and then I filled it with, and look, when all of that came full circle, and I realized how much of a poor role model I was being, my mind kind of shifted. Unfortunately, and I just saw her just walk by just a second ago. You may have saw me glance up. My oldest daughter, she walked through a lot of that turmoil, right? That we were going through when I was a bad dad, right? Bad parenting. And now she is about to be 21. She's going into ministry. She works as the assistant for one of the most amazing people I've ever met in Jeannie Mayo as a pastor, and she's doing such amazing things. But I missed a lot of time of where I could have been present.
Yeah.
I was always present at a bar, present in the bottle of a bottle, present in maybe even my video games, dude. Like I love gaming. I'm just a geek at heart, man. I love nerding out. And I could get consumed with a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
And when my second daughter came around, when all was getting saved, she was 1, 2, or 3, right? She was in that range of age. But what I realized is when she was growing up, she is kind of like my twin, like personality wise. Yeah. And I knew that I could send her into a different space, right? And so she linked on to softball really early. I was a baseball guy. My oldest played ball. She gave that up to dance, right? And was the most beautiful dancer ever. I mean, she's just amazing, right? And then my little dude, he plays ball too, and he's kind of coming through that thing. But baseball was the one thing that I had as a kid that I knew I was really good at, and I could get a lot of praise. And as a words of affirmation person, that was awesome. Yeah. When I saw my daughter doing that, that bonds us. It's one of those things that we bond on.
Sure.
And look, and truth be told, she's had a couple tough weeks. And her team's doing great. Her team's winning games. They're like number 1 in the state. They're number 12 in the country at her age group. And she's been at the bottom of her team and really struggling with that. And I've struggled with that because that's the thing that kind of shows us. And I appreciate you saying those things because, man, I had a moment just 2 hours ago about it. You know, we just got back from our tournament and really just talking with my wife. And you're so true. Like being present is very important for me.
Yeah.
And that's why when we go out and do these ministries, man, when we do the sex trafficking ministry, I come home and sometimes I just like secretly sneak into my daughter's room and just be like, man, I love you, and kiss her on the forehead and let her go to bed. You know, like I see these girls and I'm like, where the heck is your dad? Where's your, where is your uncle? Where's Uncle Tommy? Like, why are you letting you do this?
Yeah.
You know, where's your big brother? Where's your little brother, for goodness sakes?
Yeah.
Right? Where's mama? And it's like, I come home and look, consistency is it, man. Ministry is tough as it is. This kind of ministry we do it's tough, man.
So let me ask you a question. You have teams that come out and learn how you do things. You're kind of setting them up to try and to kind of recreate it in their own town, in their own area. Or you have people, maybe they're listening on this podcast today, which, by the way, if you're listening, I'm going to say this at the end, too. I forgot to say it at the beginning because I was too busy mispronouncing things. Please just like and subscribe and do everything you can to follow us. I'm not a like and subscribe kind of guy. This isn't, like, on me, but I do want this message. I want messages from Kirk, from Jackie, from Mossy, and anybody else coming on this podcast. I want their message projected, so please like and subscribe. But Yeah, so people that come out and do the Dream Center experience or frontline response experience, or they listen to how you do it and they don't even experience themselves. They're just going to try it at home. The first thing I notice when people try to recreate this is the Dream Center sets you up to be able to do it. Like it's all set up, or the frontline response is all set up, and you just have to be present, and then you're directed. But when you go home, when you're in your hometown, when someone's in their hometown and they're trying to do it, they're not being dragged by the hand. They've got to do all the steps themselves. They've got to do all the hard work, the planning, the logistics, and everything. And they can probably do it once, maybe twice, and then they just lose motivation. They don't have enough recognition. I did it 2 Saturdays in a row, and then I got a wedding. And so consistency drops off. My question to you is, when people do that, do you think that does more harm than if they weren't there at all? If they show up twice and not thrice, does it do damage? And would it have been better if they didn't start at all? Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we have conversations like this quite a bit, to be honest. We haven't talked to it in a while. We usually have a war room once a year and kind of touch base on certain things that we probably need to cut or add or just do some things differently. And I'll say this, I think it depends on the ministry, right? Okay. So if you want a one-off homeless ministry and go out and feed people, once every, 3-6 months, once a year, you guys set up this big event or whatever, I think that's fine, right? I think the more consistent you can be, the better. If you ask Nick, that's why he doesn't miss a Thursday, because here's the deal. When you go out and you do these ministries, if you really want to see them, if your purpose is to bless them, right, one-offs are good. If your purpose is to change their life, they have to trust you.
Right.
And they're not going to trust you by you showing up with a pair of socks and a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Right.
They're not going to, that's just okay, thank you. Right. But if you show up 7 days in a week with a meal, or I'm sorry, 7 weeks in a row, 1 day a week with a meal, that's what I meant to say. Let me give you a stat that Nick gives, and then you may remember this, Sean. But Nick always shares that on the streets of Atlanta, we have anywhere between 3,500 and 4,000 people of homeless a day, right? It's storming here this all day today.
Right.
And one of the things that he says is that on average, every homeless person goes at least 3 months without someone looking them in the eye.
Yeah.
3 months without someone looking them in the eye. 6 months without them hearing their name.
Yeah. I talk about this a lot at my church. Yeah.
We share that kind of stat, and truth be told, I won't take ownership of it. Nick says it all the time. I have no idea where it comes from, but it's a really good stat to get you in the right mindset. Because let me tell you this: you want to change somebody on the street's life? Show up on a Thursday and walk up to them, look them dead in their eye, and go, "Hey, man, what's your name?" And shake their hand and hand them some food. When he says, "My name's Wesley," you say, "Wes, yo, what got you out here?" "Oh, well, I lost my job, or I got let out of prison, or I couldn't pay my rent, I got a divorce, blah, blah, blah. I drove down here for work and I can't get back." Right? "Man, can I pray with you? Let me pray with you." You pray with him, whatever. Then you show up next Thursday with a meal. And when you see Wesley come around the bend, "Wes, what's up, bro? Man, I've been praying for you."
You're being intentional about saying his name.
Whoa, you remember my name?
Yeah.
Let me tell you, you do that 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 times a week or in a month, they're going to be like, hey, this guy really means what he's saying, because they're used to disappointment.
Right.
And they're used, tons of churches, tons of organizations hand out food. Not everybody remembers their name. And that's a big deal, man. Nick is the director of this department. Nick literally writes names down. And then next to the name, he'll explain what that guy was wearing, what he looks like maybe how he maybe looks like somebody similar, famous or something like that. Gives all these traits so that when he sees them again, or like where he saw him or whatever, it's like, oh, the guy that looks like,
Mario,
so-and-so, right? He looks like Keanu Reeves, right? Hey, there he is. Oh, his name is Bill. And look, we do our best to remember those names, and usually Nick does. But, we get that, and that's that one thing that goes, man, this guy went the extra mile to remember that.
Yeah.
That's what consistency does, man.
Yeah.
Now, if you're really wanting to change their life, you're going to need to do that. If you're just trying to bless them, get in line. Tons of people are trying to bless them.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's okay. There's great ministries for that. Nothing knocking that, man. So do I think it does harm? No, because you're just one of the people in the cycle. They need the help. They needed a meal that day. God divinely ordered your steps to get them that couple dollars or whatever it was. But they're never going to gain your trust, or you're vice versa. You're never going to gain their trust.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So this might be kind of in that same topic, but I'm going to do like a little parallel, and then I'll ask the question. So,
Sure.
a lot, like abortion's kind of a hot button issue, but I see a lot of Christians like staking out outside of like Planned Parenthoods, that kind of thing, and I understand their heart, because as a Christian it is heartbreaking to think of like an innocent child being killed by their own mother, but I think that is like a symptom and not the root, because like you have to think about like a mother getting to the point where they're okay with killing their own baby. Like that's a lot there, not just the act itself. Like there's a lot of things that lead up to that. So what would you say are some of the roots that you have to tackle in your work, and how do you uproot those things and differentiate them from the symptoms or the expressions that those roots take?
So I didn't think that was where you were going. I was planning that answer. So first and foremost, I, as a young warthog,
what's in a name?
I had 2 abortions as a kid, or as a teenager, being very uneducated, unprepared, immature, and then really the girls that I hung out with, both of them were ex-girlfriends of mine, even ex-fiancés, really. I didn't have a plan, and that was just dumb. I don't have many regrets in my life. That's definitely 2 of them. So I thought, hey, like, okay, you're going to ask me something in that area. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing was, you talked about Planned Parenthood and kind of like maybe that area. And I was like, well, I'll tell you about my daughter real quick.
Yeah.
She was in ministry school, and they had to, for all intents and purposes, kind of go out and minister to those people.
Yeah.
And she had a big deal. She had a big issue with one of the parts of the ministry that she was doing, and basically just the natural design of how that ministry was happening. And it was kind of like a cover the mouth deal, and right.
Look the other way.
Yeah. And so my daughter was like, no, I don't want to do it that way, because I don't know how much that's really going to help. Mm-hmm. And really wanted to minister to them. Like, I want to talk to them. I want to let them know, maybe about my dad. I mean, just yeah. So I thought you might have been going those two, right?
Yeah,
And
kind
so I
of
was like,
curveball. But
I'm ready. And then you went, hey, give me some of the root. And I was like, oh, you're talking about, oh. So anyways, yeah, the root, man, let me just tell you this. The root of what we're seeing, and look, we just had a big election.
I can guess it.
Huh?
I said I can guess it.
We just had a huge election, man. And it went really chaotic for our country, man.
Yeah.
And not because of who was elected, right? Just in general. I mean, that too, but it just in general of how this went down was just really bad for us. Like it's a hole that we're going to have to dig out of. But one of the main things that has come out in the last 3 years because of this election and the domestic violence and the different cancel cultures and all the things that have been going on is this idea of systemic racism.
Yeah.
And let me just be honest. I work in those places where it happens, and it is real. I mean, it's real. It just is. Like, but huge but and a huge caveat. That doesn't mean you can't get out of it. That doesn't mean you can't. And that's because you need to tackle the chains that you feel are weighted all over you. There's so many people that come out of these places that are just successful, right?
Yeah.
And when I say successful, you don't need to be a rapper or a Major League Baseball star or a basketball player. Like, those are all the stereotypes, right? There are so many smart kids that come out and go do politics, for goodness sakes. I mean, like, just amazing things, right? But what needs to happen is they need to know that, first off, they need to have good parents in their life. And that's a rare thing. That is a very rare thing because of the systemic things that are just keep passing down. Like, unfortunately, they're raised by kids who are raised by kids who maybe even been raised by kids. So your grandma is like 36, right? You know what I'm saying? And so when these things kind of happen, it's just really hard to get through. Mm-hmm. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. You see great people. And so you see these kids sending us report cards with straight A's, you know, where before we just had these simple togethers, their report cards were failing because they were absent, or they were failing because they just couldn't read or whatever. And so those are some of the roots, right? If you want to hit the real root of all those things, that's it. Now, just a brief squirrel, right? Root of sex trafficking, and I'm going to be honest, is the pornography lane, right? And so we have some people that are fighting that, right? We have some people that are, you know, porn is the new drug, that kind of stuff, all these cool organizations. But there's people that are on our side that are fighting pornography, because what we're seeing is pornography is literally in almost every 10-year-old's pocket. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
And so it's right here. And that gives you this culture. Let me tell you what pornography is doing for the sex trafficking. One, almost every single porn that you watch, right? Almost every one of them. It's unless you pick that that special one where you want like dominatrix or some weird fetishes or whatever, almost all of them, the guy is super in control and basically makes the woman do whatever he wants, right? That's not how that works. No. That's not how that works, right? But that's what it teaches, right? And you know, 10-year-old, 12-year-old gets a hold of this and they look, right, in these poor cultures that haven't had anybody speak life into them, and they learn from that, right? So then when so-and-so comes by and goes, oh, this is how I'm supposed to be. I seen mom doing it. I seen sister doing it. I watched it on TV, on my phone, right? And it sounds like, oh, you can't be that serious. Really, we are that serious. Like Pornhub. We have things that are going down to shut down Pornhub. I mean, like, because it is a sex trafficking hub. Now you got things like TikTok and all this stuff that are just really high on chasing these little kids. And when there's no consistency or no parenting, and it's right here, it's a one-way ticket to just one, a poor lifestyle, and two, it can get pretty much every, for lack of a better term, every 13, 14, 15-year-old girl from the ghetto can get an opportunity that way.
Yeah.
And that sucks. That's terrible. So like when you read the root there, we are fighting that side of stuff too. Mm-hmm. You know, one of the things that we're trying to get into is child trafficking and child pornography. Like we're trying to get into that world right now. So that you asked about roots. That's a good thing for the root. Homeless, man, I don't know what the root is to that because I can give you 95 ways to get on the streets by yourself. I was one bad takeaway of getting there. Basically, I think good parenting, good support system. So all the stupid things that I did in my life could have led me to the streets, except I had a good support system. Mm-hmm. They just wouldn't let me. My sister said, move in with me. My friend said, move in with me. My dad helped me pay that bill. My mom helped me do this. My sister helped me do that. If I don't have those people, I'm out on the street. Yeah. And the people that we minister to, they don't got that support system.
My wife's uncle, probably similar situation, except he didn't accept the help. Even they don't know if he's alive or not yet. He lives somewhere on the streets of Seattle, if he's still alive right now. Last time I saw him was about 6 years ago. They were watching the news and they interviewed a guy, and hey, that's my mom's brother. And they went to the news outlet, tried to figure out if they could find him. They did. They let him move in, and they spent like maybe three months with him, and then he ended up breaking his femur, and then it just like disappeared one day. Like they tried to help him, send him to the hospital. He like refused all the help, and he just disappeared.
Dang.
That's been the pattern of his life. Just he's got to do everything himself, and he kind of wants to be on the street. He's adjusted to that lifestyle.
So, you make a good point. They did something during COVID very recently here in Atlanta, where they kind of like rented a whole hotel, like this big hotel, and the city got enough money to rent the hotel, and they got like security to be over it and all this stuff, and so they rented it, and they were just putting homeless people in it, mainly because of COVID. Like, let's minimize that COVID reaction, and now we have the money that the government's kind of given. Well, that money, from what I understand, I am not the authority on this resource, to be honest. This is just what I'm hearing, in the halls of Frontline. But that the money is maybe running out, and that might die down, and then all those people go back to the streets again. But what they were finding is either that the people that were on the streets were people that wanted to be on the streets.
Yeah.
Like they didn't want to be off the streets. And the other people were brand new. So our rescues kind of went out the roof because it was one or the other. It was not like having this big, long conversation about trying to get trust. Look, I just made my way on the streets, and somebody would say, hey, yeah, those guys will help you off. I just don't want it.
Yeah.
And there were lots of people that just don't want it, to be honest.
So this is what you said Kirk, just now, just kind of made two things click. And Wesley, you're talking about roots, and I know a handful of different people from different churches. I'm in a handful of group chats. Even within my own church, there's like so many subdivision groups. And everybody wants to go out and do an outreach, and I'm not going to lie, a lot of people want to do it for the Instagram likes, and it's like that's another problem to work on, right? Totally. Yeah.
You got to get the selfie with the bag, that meme.
So people know that I can be compassionate. Like they've known I've done this kind of stuff. And they're like, Sean, what do you think about this? They have this whole big plan. I'm like, you're missing the most important part. And they're like, what's that? I'm like, let's have a conversation. Listen, people that are living on the street most of the time, and this could be different in the Seattle area, but most of the time, when they're youth, they probably have a home. They're not homeless. Just their home sucks. They got abusive parents, or you name it. So they have a home, they just don't want to be at it. Adults, they could have a home. We have plenty of resources in this state, but to be at access to those resources, you got to be sober. You gotta work, and you're held accountable. And a lot of people find it easier to live under a tarp than to be held accountable. And I always tell people, like, you can't just give people food, socks, blankets, more tarps to litter the ground with, and expect them to turn their life around. You actually have to like walk them, like get their toes wet in a process of rehumanizing them. Because right now, at least in the Seattle area, when you talk about that stat about not being looked in the eye, I tell you, in cold culture Seattle, they'll probably go longer not having eye contact or someone saying their name, and they don't feel like human. And if someone doesn't feel like a human, why would they want to live a lifestyle where they're held accountable, even if it came with being successful? Like, yes, they recognize that they're a person, but when they're living on the street for more than a month, like, they've separated themselves from normal society, and they're their own society now. And they don't give two licks about what you have to offer them. They'll take it, but it's like you said, like, take a number, like, other people are going to provide it too. And so the root I'm seeing this in like the homeless population, the homeless crisis, is the root is humanization or dehumanization. And how do we as a public, like, treat people that are living in homelessness? And what are we doing to make people feel like human? Are we looking them in the eye? You know, are we being intentional about saying their name? And after that, all you can do is hope, is that maybe that glimpse of being treated like a human will, garner some interest in, coming back into that part of their life. That's just something I see. What do you think about that, Kirk?
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Gosh, what I was thinking of in my head as you were talking about that was the penny story. Do you remember the penny story?
Is that
It rings a bell, but...
Is that compound interest?
No, but that
penny story?
So the idea is that if I was to, and I've been doing this recently, when I have my orientations, I just randomly put a penny in the room and nobody picks it up ever.
I see.
Right? They walk by it. They don't give it value. They don't talk about it. They don't point it out, pick the penny up. I mean, and I intentionally put it on tails, so it's not like get good luck or whatever. Right? And so I'll put it there, and then what ends up happening is at the end of the orientation, I'll talk about it and I'll say, hey, look, so 3 months eye contact, 6 months name. Let me tell you about a penny. The penny by the U.S. government is given a value of 1 cent, 1/100th of a dollar, right? And if I was able, if I was to exchange this penny for something silver, even 5 of those, right? A nickel, which is only 5 of them, right? You will pick that nickel up almost every time, right? If I change it to a quarter, you ain't letting it get by, right? If I change it to $1, y'all are fighting for it. If it gets up in a bigger bill than that, you're probably ripping it in half to try and get to it, right? All these, like, I couldn't have put it down. That's why people like evangelists use $100 bills as tracts and fold it up so it looks like a bill, and you're going to pick it up and it's like, oh, you thought you were getting a $100 bill, you want to know how to go to heaven, right?
It's happened to me once, and I haven't let it go since.
Yeah. And so here's the deal. Our homeless people feel like those pennies. They feel like they have no value, that they're constantly walked by. Nobody bends down and helps them get off the street, right? They just sit there and just walk back and forth and back and forth. And so one of the things that I started doing was telling that story. And this year, we are 3 weeks in, and I have a mason jar that's in my car if I would have thought about it, about coming in, and talking about the story, I would have brought it. But the mason jar is about as high as what my Mountain Dew is right now in 3 weeks of pennies, right? A good 150 to almost 200 pennies in 3 weeks. And so I told them, whoever comes on the trip, I'm like, hey, look, I'm collecting pennies. If y'all find pennies, bring them to me, because I want to get this big jar at the end of the year, and then next year be like, look at all these pennies we found on the street. And literally, we walk by that every day, and it's like, how many pennies, how many homeless people do we not give dignity to?
Right.
They're just trash. You've seen well, I don't know if you've seen it, but you may have seen the video where the pastor sits out in front of the church all dressed in trash, and kind of like where you can't see his face, and he's kind of asking for money, and all the people walk by him and go in and whatever. And then he gets up when everybody's in and walks in and preaches. And he's like, every one of you guys walk by me. Like, that's not what the church is about. But that's what our society does, man. And people don't have that. And so, yes, they get jaded.
Yeah.
They get hardened, they get hardened. They're like, that's why they don't get any trust.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that root, really, it's the same root for us getting saved. It's the same root of us giving our life to Christ and getting back into good graces with the Lord. It's all about relationship.
Yeah.
Right. And that relationship starts with, first off, hey, my name is Kirk and I'm a sinner. Right. And so we need to do that with our people. Like, when we're talking to these guys, hey man, what's your name? Hey, my name is Kirk. I am sorry that you're out here. What can I do to help you? Can I pray with you? I got some food. I would love to come back and see you next week. But, if you call this phone number, we can help you get somewhere. No, I'm not calling that. All right, next week. Hey, man, Wesley, did you think about calling that number? Nah, man. Hey, next week. Yeah. So Nick also tells a story like this, and this is humanization right here, that you're at its finest. So he goes out and he talks to this guy. I forget his name, but he's homeless. And he's like, hey, I just wanted to talk to you. No, I don't believe any of that. I've tried that before. Da 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 da. Right? And then about 3 or 4 weeks later, it's storm and rain. Right? Nick had been consistent going out, seeing the guy. He just kind of turned him away. Right? It's storm and rain. Right? Nick goes out in the middle of the rain with an umbrella and goes up to this guy and walks right up to him, says his name, and says, hey, I just wanted to give you this umbrella. He says, what are you doing out here? You have a house. You have a bed. Why are you out here messing with us? I just want to make sure that you guys are cared for and that you have something to keep you dry. He immediately was like, man, you really do care. I've seen you 8 weeks in a row, right? And he called the number, and now he's been off the streets for like 3 years. We just celebrated him a couple weeks ago and celebrated this amazing story, right? And it all was because of 8 weeks of knowing your name, being consistent, and going out in the middle of the rain, right? And so, it never fails. You're just the white guy out here trying to get the selfie.
Right.
And that's what we're here for, right? That's not what we're here for.
Kind of a follow-up that you talked about, like them being passed over and kind of hardening them, giving them a bit of an edge. Give a little bit of a story of one of my encounters, and then kind of ask a question of, just ask a question after that. So this was maybe 2 years ago. There was a homeless man. I didn't even necessarily know he's homeless. He looked a little dingy, for lack of words, but I started talking to him, and found out like, oh, he's homeless. He has a phone. He doesn't have a plan for it, but he goes to Starbucks to get like Wi-Fi so he can text and call and all that. And I just got to talking to him, get to know him, know his name, and he actually said, well, I'm trying to get a job. I got out of prison like a few years ago, and I've been struggling to get a job. And he asked me for a ride to like a local like a center so he could shower, and then I bought him actually some slacks and stuff so he could look presentable for his job interview. And I drove him to his job interview, and we got to know each other a little bit. And then a couple months went by, and we would just talk every once in a while. I would see him out and about town. And then he said, hey, I actually got that job. Now I am trying to get an apartment. I helped him move all his stuff from a storage unit to an apartment. And then a couple months went by just talking to him. And then he called me. He's like, hey, I need you to help pick me up from this place, like right now. I'm like, hey, I'm out of town. I can't come get you. And he started like cursing at me and like threatening and just got like, he was like, I'm going to find where you live and all that. So I hung up and blocked him right there. So how would you have healthy boundaries with getting to know them and really like adding value to them and humanizing them, but not letting them use that edge against you?
Yeah, it happens. It happens a lot, actually, more than I would want to admit. There's a lot of time. Let me just say this. The streets make you street crazy sometimes. They make you that hardened idea. Like, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but they make you tough. I mean, the streets are going to make you, I mean, you just don't trust people. You don't. And they're used to people disappointing them. And honestly, most offense is always unmet expectations. And so when you roll into their life and you're actually showing signs of really great movement, how dare you have a family? How dare you not be able to bring me? How dare you have a job? Because I've never had anything other than you doing these things, and now you're just like everybody else who gave up on me, and then immediately goes into that.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if I have the answer, but this is kind of what I would be originally thinking. If I was to get close to someone like that, one thing I always like to say is my house is always open. Like, listen, I might not be able to help you this time, but I'll still help you. Okay. Like, let's be consistent. Can I do this tomorrow? Set up another appointment, but what I would like to say is, hey, look, right off the bat, you're going to have some expectations of me, and I got some expectations of you. I just want to see you get from one place to the next. If I can help you, I'd love to. If I can't, I maybe try and help you get somewhere else. But I'm not going to be always doing that, be able to do those things, and set that expectation kind of lower. Because I think, honestly, and it's even with us, right? Like even on this podcast, right? Unmet expectations, right? So if I did something totally different that you were asking me, and you'd be like, gosh, we just wasted an hour and a half or whatever of our lives, you guys would be offended and be like mad, and we wouldn't talk. And so, I mean, that's just unmet expectations. When they're out on the streets, their expectations are so low. And when you give them that, you've set the new bar. Mm. And then, you just did it again. Unfortunately, I think the best answer is it's a casualty of war. Yeah. Right? I think you're just gonna have them. And it's almost like when you're in sales, you have to have 10 no's before you get one yes, right? There are so many people that you're going to consistently fail before you get that one person. And then you just can't let that be the one that weights you down. Just know that you planted a good seed. Continue to pray for them even though when they're gone. And then hopefully the next time that they answer or they need you, they look for you in your number again.
Yeah.
Right. But you're right. I've seen people, and like a couple weeks later, hadn't seen them in a while. I'm like, dude, you don't remember we brought y'all? They don't care. I had one the other day. We had umbrellas we were bringing out. One of the teams that came bought like 300 umbrellas. They're an amazing team. They were just so cool. And we're handing out umbrellas to a guy that I knew, right? And I was like, one at a time, because we had all these umbrellas. You don't need 70 umbrellas, right? Well, what's going to end up happening? They'll sell them or whatever. But I wanted to make sure everybody I can get them to in their hands have at least one umbrella. Well, this one guy, he's a fairly large guy, kind of intimidating looking. He goes, can I have another one? I'm like, no, we're doing one at a time. Oh, I just gave you an umbrella, and now all of a sudden I'm a jerk because you wanted the umbrella.
Yeah.
Now I'm a jerk because I didn't give you a second umbrella.
I've experienced that before. It's like somebody asked me for money, and I gave him a couple of dollars in my pocket, and he came back a couple minutes later and was like, "This isn't enough for cigarettes. Like, what are you trying to pull?" I was like, I had $2 on me, dude.
Yeah. And so here's the deal. He then went to my friend that was out there with me and says, "Hey, give me an umbrella." And I was like, "Man, we're just doing one." And he gave me like this evil look, right? So then he walked over there and waited. And when they came around, we had like 10 or 15 people. He got an umbrella from that person, and he kind of like bragged about it. And then he started pointing like, don't listen to them, as we're handing all these umbrellas out in the middle of the rain, right? That's just one of those things, man. I don't take it personal. You know, one of the funny things, not the funny things, but usually like when we go out, I like, hey, let's see how many times they ask, can I have an extra meal or whatever, because of their friend up the street, right? And there was a time where, you know, oh, my wife is around the corner, or there's a guy in the wheelchair that can't get here. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, look, you just want multiple food. Okay, that's okay. But there was times where we only had a certain amount of meals, so we'd only do one at a time. And so we'd hand them a meal, right? And then because I didn't hand them a second meal, they'd throw the first meal at us, right? What kind of sense does that make? You wanted a second meal, since you can't get the first. Now, look, I'm not making fun of them, but that's the kind of stuff that happens. And if I take offense to that, like,
you're gonna run dry.
That wasn't my divine appointment today. Okay, that just wasn't. And that's spiritual warfare there. And I just let that go, because look, it is what it is, right? The blessing happened. Just keep moving. So
I would say, I have like one other question would be for like a listener right now, if maybe they are in school and like maybe they're in their senior year. I have a friend who's in his senior year of architecture, and I can't get a hold of that guy. He's kind of gone, just really busy. What would you tell somebody who wants to either bless or really connect and help somebody? Maybe they can't get into a local ministry, but they want to spend some time, some effort, some money, whether it be, you know, half an hour or 5 hours in a week.
So I would be really remiss that you opened the door here. Our ministry and many ministries like ours always need donors. Most nonprofits run off of the backs of just amazing businessmen, right? A lot of times businessmen, or not just businessmen, just, you know, it could be the housewife, right? And she just has a little extra and she just has it on her heart. And it doesn't matter how much you make, but a lot of these ministries, you know, you just have really busy people, and they will help you do your ministry. And that's kind of like their way of blessing, right? That we do all kinds of funding. One of the biggest funding is to come on our missions experience, which everybody's welcome to do that. I'd love to connect with people, but and do like a week-long deal. But the other thing is, you could just be a week, like 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, you know, a month a year donor. But look, I don't have to be greedy. Like, we're here in Atlanta. We would love every donor. I mean, like, seriously. But locally within your footprint, I'm sure there's a ministry that could use your funding, right? Second thing is, like, for us, if you're ever in the Atlanta area, not just to do a mission trip, but we have volunteer opportunities where you can serve on every one of our ministries, like on a Thursday night, serving food to the homeless, on a Saturday night, going out and doing sex trafficking ministry, a Saturday morning doing children's ministry in the urban setting, right? Friday night, we do strip club ministry. You know, we do all these missions. They're all volunteer, and you sign up and you go through the training, you do the background checks, and you can do that once a week, right? You can just be the volunteer team. You don't have to be on our team. You can be the teacher, and I always say the teacher, but I mean, you can be a businessman, you can work in the oil field, you can, you know, work at Walmart, whatever. And then at every Thursday night, you're a part of the team, right? For 2 hours of your life, you can do that. I promise you, there's ministries just like this close to your home, wherever you're watching this. But if you're ever in the Atlanta area, man, definitely look us up. And if you have a ministry that you want to come and visit us and set up a missions experience, it's really easy as emailing missions@frontlineresponse.org. That's it. Or looking us up on our webpage. But I mean, you asked the question. There's so many really good, amazing Christian ministries, and let's be honest, it doesn't have to be Christian. There's so many amazing ministries seeking out to do good service to the least of these.
Yeah.
You know, they're out there.
Yeah, I used to be a part of an organization that had no Christian affiliation. It was called Stand Up for Kids. They just served kids living on the street. They were specific about saying we don't serve homeless kids because most of the time they're not homeless. And like kids living on the street do not want to be called homeless. It doesn't sound cool. Being called a street kid sounds cooler. So, and yeah, no Christian affiliation, which actually was cool because it brought in, you know, a different group of people that had a different group of, you know, skills that, you know, maybe harder to find in a Christian circle. There's a lot more I want to talk about, to be honest. But I know right now it's like
part two, man.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, man. We got to go for part two because it's 11 p.m. over in your neck of the woods right now, and you got kids. And
are you Eastern?
Yeah, he's Eastern time right now.
My wife and I were long distance. I was Central though, in near Nashville. So I remember coming home from work, making dinner. She wanted to Skype, and then like, I gotta get to bed. Like, I was trying to have like Skype dates every night.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, so let's first off, thank you. Thank you for having me. And Wesley, it's great meeting you.
You too.
And hey, let's set it up again, man. Let's run it back.
I'm thinking right now, strategy wise, probably gonna get episode 6, which is gonna be a recap of this episode and the other 4 that came before it. Episodes 7, 8, and 9 with some 3 new people, and then maybe episode 10, bring you in, and I really want to dive in on like the youth, because that's really like my target, like it's who I want my target audience to eventually become in this podcast, and to, to hear light at the end of the tunnel. One second. So for any of you listening as we wrap up, if you're looking for a ministry to be a part of, Frontline Response, look them up. If you have
Instagram, Facebook, Twitter,
it'll be linked in the description.
And then your Instagram again
at KP to PK.
Yeah,
number 2.
If you want to follow this amazing guy, he is a weirdo just like me. And he will follow you no matter who you are. And then we haven't even talked about it yet, but you were on a podcast recently. If you want to kind of
plug that
plug
that one real quick.
Yeah. So I met a friend of mine. My friend now, but I met him before he was a friend. So I met him at a conference, and I was like walking by him, and I was like kind of starstruck, if you will. My buddy Dallas, and so I saw him, and I was like, "Gosh, that guy looks familiar." And so I had just got saved probably 3 or 4 years prior to this. And a couple things that I wanted to do when I got saved was, what's the cool Christian music, right? And because, I mean, prior to me being saved, I listened to, either like really hard hip hop or rock, or like heavy metal and stuff. I was like, can I do this as a Christian? So I wanted to find all the music. And the second thing was, I wanted to find the geeky culture things that I was in the world, if I could do it on that side. And I just so happened to come across this place called Geek Devotions. It's one of many that I've found now, but it was one of the first ones. And I didn't even know he was from Louisiana. I was in Louisiana. And so I looked him up. I was watching him for a little bit. And then he walked by me, and I was like, I know that guy. And then maybe about 15 minutes later, it hit me. And I went around the corner in the conference and went ahead of him. And I was like, hey, are you the guy from Geek Devotions? And he's like, I am. And so we exchanged kind of numbers and whatever. And I looked him up, and I just started talking on his podcast every once in a while, like when he was writing and talking. And then about a week ago, I was able to go on his podcast and put that down, and it released Friday. So he asked me back in November to do one on Frontline, ironically, and we did it on Superman, and because of the Zack Snyder cut. And
right.
essentially what he does is he takes pop culture references, and like he's doing a big deal with Godzilla and King Kong right now, and kind of going through that. But like anything that's kind of geeky that's coming out, or like new magazines, new comics, new TV shows, like he did a whole thing on WandaVision, and he just watches it and then does a Devo with kind of a niche of people that may not necessarily be in this world, if you know what I'm saying. So the Comic-Con kids, you know? And so I just love the ministry. It's amazing. And he's actually a media pastor for his church. So in like an outreach, like a media and online pastor. He's an media and online pastor with his church up in like the Shreveport area in Louisiana. So like up in northern Louisiana.
Have you ever heard of Jonathan Pajot? He's a YouTuber. He does a bunch of different stuff, but he does semi-occasionally like a kind of nerdy, like either video game or movie analysis. And he's a Christian up in I think Toronto, Canada. But he kind of unpacks a lot of the symbols that are in those things, like from a Christian perspective, that a lot of people may not even be aware of that are being used in that.
Wow, that's cool. You need to connect me with him. I need to get that, and I'll check it out.
Ooh. That was a virus threat protection. Do you hear that? It blew my ears out.
Yeah, blew our ears.
He had a notification on his
on my laptop.
On his laptop, and
that's what happens when you don't resubscribe with the virus protection when you get the computer. Well, to wrap up this episode, I have 5 requests for our listeners. One, that you like this podcast if it's on YouTube.
And if you don't like it anyways.
Like it kind of keeps us generating. People see it more. Subscribe and what is it? Hit a bell for
notifications.
Alerts.
Comment. Yeah. Also commenting helps us with the algorithm.
We don't want you to forget about us. Thirdly, would you comment on this? Would you leave a review? Would you comment? Let us know what we could do better. If I need to stop saying the word like or less, I can.
I try to edit it out as much as I can.
But I make his life really hard. The last 2 things are kind of the same. 1, would you share this podcast? Would you share it on your social media? But 2, if you know someone that this would speak volumes to, would you specifically share it to them? Would you direct message it to them? Even if it's at a late hour, just slide this podcast right in their DMs, and who knows, something might come out of it, So,
and this is also on YouTube and most, if not all, podcasting platforms at the time of this release.
If you're listening to this right now, it's on the platform that you're on.
Yeah, so I'm redundant, is what I'm saying.
Thanks again for listening. Kirk, thank you for being on, and can't wait to have you on again. Hopefully, maybe even you can, invite some success stories from the Atlanta area on, and guest appearance with you, and we can have some.
Yeah, so let's plan that and see if I can get some people.
That'd be great. I would love that. Absolutely. Yeah, that'll be a wrap.
Yeah, that's all I got.
Sweet.
Well, thanks, guys.
Sweet clap. Sweet.
Aim for the best, but I'll settle for better.